This is the Sabbath School lesson for the fourth quarter, 2021.
Lesson 10 from our series Present Truth in Deuteronomy is titled Remember, Do Not Forget, ready for teaching on December 4, and I'm Percy Harrold. Sunday, November 28, Remembering the Rainbow. The first time the word remember appears in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 9, when, after the worldwide flood, the Lord told Noah that he would put the rainbow in the sky as a sign of his covenant with all earth, that he would never again destroy all the earth with a flood. Read Genesis 9, 8-17. How is the word remember used here, and what can we learn from its use for how we should remember what God has done for us? Genesis 9, beginning at verse 8, Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, of all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Of course, God didn't need the rainbow to remember his promise and his covenant. He just spoke in language that humans could understand. If anything, the rainbow is for us as humans to remember God's promise and covenant not to destroy the world again by water. In other words, the rainbow was to help people remember this special covenant that God had made. Each time the rainbow appeared, God's people would remember not only God's judgment upon the world for its sin, but also his love for the world and his promise not to flood it again. Hence, we see here the importance of the idea of remembering God's promises, remembering God's warnings, remembering God's action in the world. The rainbow in the sky becomes even more important today when, based on the continuity of the laws of nature, many scientists reject the idea that there ever was a worldwide flood to begin with. How fascinating that Ellen G. White wrote that, before the flood came, many people had the same idea, that the continuity of the laws of nature ruled out the possibility that a worldwide flood could ever happen. She wrote that the wise men argued that nature's laws are so firmly established that God himself could not change them. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 97. So, before the flood, people argued, based on the laws of nature, that it couldn't come. After the flood, people argue, based on the laws of nature, that it never came to begin with. However, God in his word told us about the flood and gave the world a sign, not only of the flood, but also of his promise not to bring one again. Thus, if we remember what the rainbow means, we can have the assurance, written across the sky in these beautiful colours, that God's word is true, and if we can trust his word on this promise, why not trust his word on all that he tells us as well? So to finish today, next time you see a rainbow, think of God's promises. How can we learn to trust all of these promises? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.